All right, welcome back, the genius. So let us start DOM manipulation. Okay, what is DOM? How do we manipulate DOM and everything about it? So this is an interesting subject to learn. And as a JavaScript developer, as a JavaScript programmer, you really need to know how to do this. Okay, so let's jump into it and let's see what is DOM. DOM means Document Object Model. All right. It is a programming interface and API for web documents. So now web documents can include XML, it can be HTML. Okay. So the DOM actually gives you a programming interface to manipulate the web documents, okay, using JavaScript. So with the DOM, you can actually do a whole lot of things. You can change the text of the document. You can change the appearance of it. You can remove elements from the document. You can add elements to the document. You can do a whole lot of things with it. Okay. So it represents the structure and the content of an HTML or XML document as a tree-like structure. All right. So when you write your HTML or you write your XML document, all right, the DOM will represent it, will convert that HTML or XML to something that looks like a tree. All right. It will create it like something that looks like a tree, where each element in an object is called a node. All right. So it is going to be like a tree. You know, when you have a tree, every element in that object is a node. And remember that the document object model is an object. We just discussed JavaScript objects. Okay, so the document element of the document object model is an object. All right, it's an object. So think of the DOM as the bridge between the HTML you write and the JavaScript code that manipulates it. You know, most of the when you write a web application or most of the web applications you see, all right, it is actually JavaScript manipulating the HTML to make it very interactive. All right, JavaScript is manipulating the HTML to make it very, very interactive. So how does JavaScript manipulate this HTML? JavaScript manipulates it using the DOM model. Okay, so JavaScript is not definitely manipulating the HTML itself. No, JavaScript is working with the DOM. All right, JavaScript is working with the DOM. So any changes that JavaScript make on the DOM, the browser will actually update the HTML. All right. So now let's get to understand better how the DOM is structured. How does this DOM look like? So imagine when you have an HTML document like this. Okay, you have the doc type, you have the HTML element, the head, the title, the body, H1 and paragraph. Okay, so when you have something like this, okay, this is your HTML page. This is the HTML page that you write. So the browser is going to create a DOM. The browser will convert this HTML that you just saw now, the browser will convert it into a DOM tree, and it will look like this. All right, so look at it. This is the document of the document, HTML, head, and all this. So the browser will convert it and it will be document. Inside the document, we'll have the HTML, inside it will have the head, and inside the head, we have the title, we have the body. So you can see that this is how it works. The H1 and the H and the P are inside the body. The title is inside the head, and the head and the body, they are inside the HTML. So it is like a hierarchical structure. Okay, so every HTML element becomes a node in this tree. The base of this DOM, everything is a node. Every element becomes a node. Node is actually the foundation of this DOM tree. Okay, so everything becomes a node. Even the text that you write becomes a node. Okay, so don't worry, we'll talk about types of node in the next section. But let us understand the DOM. So the DOM, when you have an HTML like that, the browser will convert this HTML to something like this. So let's go and write some code. Okay, I'm going to delete everything from here, and I will just create a new document type. All right, so the title is document, and I'm going to have H1, my DOM, And I'm going to have a paragraph here. The DOM. Okay. So if I save this, all right, and open this in the browser, all right. So if you have live server, you can actually right click if you have live server and open with live server, okay. And if you don't know how to, if you don't have live server and you don't know how to add the extension to your Visual Studio Code, please reach out to us. Already we have taught this thing in the HTML. Yes, we have taught this how to do this in HTML. So before you even come to this, before you even come to this class, you should have done the HTML. All right, you should have taken the HTML class to an extent. So when I open with Live Server, it will open the browser for us. So let me go to the console. I will right click and inspect. So I will have my console here. So guess what? If I type in document, all right, and hit enter, you see this is an object. All right, it has given me an object here. So, and if I expand it, you will see, this is what the tree looks like. All right. So the browser has converted this thing to a DOM, and this is what the tree looks like. Now, if I bring up what we had, if I let me look at this, you can see the document has HTML, and inside the HTML we have the head and the body. And inside the head, we have other elements, the title, the metadata, and inside the body, we have the head, the H1, and the body. Okay, and then this script that was included here. All right. Okay, so you can see how this is what the DOM looks like. So you access the DOM using the document object. Okay, so with this document, you can do a whole lot with it. All right. So let's have an analogy of the DOM so that we can understand it better. The DOM is like, think of your HTML, the HTML that you write, think of it as the blueprint of a house. You use the HTML, when before you have a building, you have a blueprint. Your architect will design a blueprint for you, and you use that blueprint to go and create any house that you want to create. Now, the HTML that you write is the blueprint of the house, and the DOM is the actual house built. So the browser uses the HTML as a blueprint to build the DOM. Okay, so the browser will use the HTML to build the DOM. So whatever HTML you give the browser will use it to create the DOM. All right. So you can walk into rooms. Okay. Now, the HTML is the blueprint of a house. So you can use the DOM is the actual house built from that blueprint. So when we have built that house, we can walk into the rooms. That means we can traverse. Okay, we can go through all the elements. Now, the elements are not the rooms. All right, the rooms of your house are the elements. Okay, so we can actually walk through all the elements in the DOM. We can walk into all the rooms in the house. We can redecorate. We can redecorate the house. We can change the styles. All right, we can actually repaint it. We can change the way we have decorated it. Okay, so that is changing the styles of the DOM. All right, or we can even tear down or rebuild the walls. After building the house, we can actually bring the whole thing down and rebuild it. So look at the rooms as the elements, and you redecorating the house is like you changing the styles of the DOM, or you can even destroy the house and rebuild it. Okay, so you can do all these things with the DOM. JavaScript is your toolbox. JavaScript is what you use to do all these things. Okay, if you want to traverse through the DOM, going through the elements, you use JavaScript. You can use JavaScript to redecorate it. You can use JavaScript to tear it down and rebuild it. Okay, so JavaScript is the main tool here. So the DOM is like a live interactive blueprint of your web page that JavaScript can read and manipulate at any time. So JavaScript is actually reading the DOM. The DOM is a live interactive blueprint of your web page. Okay, so if you want to manipulate the web page, you're actually going to be manipulate the DOM. And once you manipulate the DOM, the browser will update it. So the DOM is like a live interactive blueprint for your web page. You will create your HTML, and the HTML will be rendered by the browser. But the browser will render your HTML and also create a document-like tree that the JavaScript can use to manipulate the HTML. So how does the DOM work? Let's take a look at how the DOM works. First of all, when you write your HTML page, the browser will take that your HTML page and load it to the browser and load it so that the user will see it. So the browser loads the web page. When you have a web page, the browser will load it so that the user will see it. So when you open up a web page, the browser starts by loading the HTML file. So as we opened this document, this HTML, the browser loads it, all right, so that we can see it. That's the first thing the browser does. The browser will take this HTML page, this thing that we have written here, the browser will take it and load it, okay, so that the user can see it. So now we have something like this. So the browser will take this HTML and load it. So that's the first thing, loading the HTML page by the browser. So once the browser loads it, the browser is going to pass it. There's something we call passing. One of the things that the passing does is that the browser would also check if the HTML is correct. Okay, the browser would also check for maybe errors or something like that. But the browser will pass this HTML. It's called pass, not P-A-S-S. It is P-A-R-S-A. Okay, the browser will read the HTML from top to bottom. That is the passing. All right, it will pass it, it will read it from top to bottom. If there are any errors, it will also let you know. And as it is reading it from top to bottom, it will build the DOM for you. It will build the DOM, and the DOM is like it's an object that will be in memory, in your computer memory. The browser will read the HTML from top to bottom, and after reading it, it will now say, okay, I have gotten what I need to build. Now, the browser will use your HTML as the blueprint. Your HTML is the blueprint, all right? Then, when the browser the browser is the builder, all right? Your architect will design your blueprint for you. You give it to the builder. The builder will not build it and make a house for you. So the browser will read the HTML, just like the builder will read the blueprint of your house. All right. The browser will read the HTML. That is what we mean by passing. And then build the DOM. That DOM is going to be an object in memory. Okay. This is called the DOM tree. It is called the DOM tree. So it has a visual, this is the visual idea of what it looks like. So the document, you see, when I did document, all right, we had the document, we had the HTML, the head, and the body. So if I go back to the browser, when I typed this document, all right, you see, this document gave us, if you want to access the DOM, you actually use this document. So this document gave us the HTML, and this HTML has head and body inside of it. Okay. So now this is what it looks like. Of course, you will not be seeing it, but this is what it looks like. And you can actually work with it like this. So each element becomes a node, all right? It starts with the HTML. The HTML is a node, all right? That's the parent, the parent node. Now the HTML element has head and body, all right, as their children. Okay, then the head has the title as its own child, while the body has the H1 and the paragraph as its children. So each element becomes a node in the DOM. There are different types of node. Every element that you put in your HTML will become a node. Even the text you write in your HTML will become a node. So we have the element node, we have the text node, all right? That's the text you write in your HTML. We have the attribute nodes, we have the comments node, all right? So we are going to talk about node later on, all right? We'll talk about different types of node and what they mean. But the thing is this, once the browser loads your HTML page, your web page, the browser will pass it to read it from top to bottom and create the DOM for you. So as it's creating the DOM, it will turn every element to a node. Every element, every attribute, every test, all right, you turn them to a node. And this, when you're not manipulating or working with the DOM, you'll be working directly with the nodes, okay? So the browser has loaded your web page. The browser has passed it and created the DOM. Now the DOM is now available for live interaction. Now the DOM is now live and interactive, waiting for JavaScript or waiting for you as the developer to do whatever you want to do with it. So at this point, the browser has a full live DOM that JavaScript can interact with. All right. So you use JavaScript to interact with the DOM. So now you can access the elements. Okay, you can access the elements. Okay, so let's try to access the element. Don't worry, we actually have a separate section where we'll talk about how to, we'll explain more details on how to manipulate this DOM. Okay, but let's just give you a hint of it. So let's access an element. So we are going to access the H1 element. Okay, so if I go to the browser, I can, let me clear this console. I can say, document dot query element, query selector. And what do I want to select? I'm looking for H1. Okay, so when I do this, you can see it has given me, and remember, this our H1 is this, so it has given me the elements. You can see I queried for it. I say, give me the document. I want to access, I want to have access to it, and he gave it to me. So I can also do something like this. I can say const H1 is equal to, I can say document dot query selector, and it will give me, I'm looking for H1. Okay, so I can now say H1 and I get it. So I can work with this H1. All right, I can say H1 dot, all right, it will give me a whole lot of things. Like I said, this is an object. All right, these are the properties, the function that you can work with. So don't worry, we are coming to that later on. But you can actually, once the DOM is alive, is live and very interactive, so you can actually do whatever you want to do. You can access elements, you can change the content. Okay, so if I want to change the content of that our H1, remember, this H1 already has the text is my DOM, so I can change it from here. I can say H1.text content. The text content, and I will say is equal to your DOM. And you can see immediately it is updated. Immediately I did this, all right, I said H1.text content is equal to your DOM. It was, instead of, it changed from my DOM to DOM, from my DOM to your DOM. Okay, so this is how it is. The browser would load your web page, all right, then it will pass it, read it from top to bottom, create the DOM for you. And once the DOM is ready, it will be live and very, very, very ready for interaction. Okay, so, and that is what we're actually doing here. We can access it, we can change the text content, we can change the styles. Okay, if I want to change the color of this our H1, I can also do it. I can say H1.style dot color, and I will say is equal to red. And once I hit enter here, you can see it was immediately changed. Okay, so you can do a whole lot of things with this DOM. Okay, you can add, you can remove. Don't worry, we will have a separate session for this that will have enough time to teach you all these things. Okay, so you can add or remove elements. Okay, you can even react to events. Once a user, when you know all these things that you do when you click on a button, all right, it is actually you manipulating the DOM and you're listening to an event. So we will have separate sessions for those ones, and we'll explain how to do all these things to you. Okay, so now once you do anything with the DOM, the browser will update the page, and you saw it. Immediately I changed the color, The browser updated it. Immediately I changed the text content, the browser updated it. So how does the DOM work? First of all, your browser will load the web page. After loading the web page, the browser will pass it, read it from top to bottom, and create the DOM. All right. After creating the DOM will now be live and waiting for you to interact with it. And any interaction, any changes you make to the DOM, the browser would update the page for you. So whenever JavaScript changes the DOM, like updating text or adding an element, the browser will automatically repaint it or re-render that part of the page. So you don't have to reload the page. All right. Changes happen in real time. You saw it as soon as I changed the color, it happened in real time. Okay. So what are the differences between the live DOM and the static HTML? Remember, it is your HTML that the browser converted to the DOM. The HTML is the blueprint, the DOM is the house, while the browser is the builder. Okay, so the HTML is just a file, very static. All right, it doesn't do anything on its own. The browser will just load it and the user will see it. But if you want something live, okay, they use the DOM. The DOM is a live object in memory. The HTML can't change on its own, but the DOM can be changed dynamically using JavaScript. You saw what we just did on the console. The HTML is what you write. Meanwhile, the DOM is what the browser understands and builds. You write the HTML, the browser builds the DOM for you. All right. So let's try it yourself, okay? We have already done that. We have already done some things. So here we can actually change the body, the style of the color of the body. We have changed the color of the H1. So let's also do more experiment here. So instead of targeting the H1, I can say document dot body dot style dot background color. All right, background, and I will say it is equal to blue. Just look at what will happen immediately. I hit enter. You see the body, everything about this web page has turned to blue. All right, so this is how the DOM works. So why is the DOM so important? It enables dynamic content. This is the reason why our web applications are very dynamic. All right, you can see, you can change things, you can interact with the DOM, change colors, do everything, animation, you can do a whole lot of things. That is why. All right, Genius, welcome back. So let's talk about types of nodes in the DOM, okay? We are actually going to take our time to explain this DOM, this whole thing about DOM, because manipulating DOM, if you understand the DOM, it is going to help you a lot, especially when you start working with React and doing some interactive things with JavaScript and the web, okay? So there are types of node, but first of all, what is a node? All right, what is a node? We want to take a look at types of nodes in the DOM, but what is exactly a node? So in the DOM, everything is a node. All right, everything is a node. Remember that the DOM is like a tree. All right, it's like a tree that the browser created out of the HTML. Okay, so a node is a single point in the document tree and represents parts of the document such as elements, text, and comments. So a node is a single point in the document tree and it represents parts of the document such as elements, text, and comments. So when you have in your HTML page, you have elements, you have some text, you have some comments. All these things are going to form a node. All right. So the DOM defines a hierarchical tree structure. All right. The DOM is a hierarchy. It looks like have a hierarchy structure where the document itself is the root node. All right. The document object, all right, is the root node. You'll be working with it a lot. Document.getElement by ID, whatever. You'll be working with this document object a lot. And the document itself. Now the document that the root node there is that HTML page, the HTML itself, okay, that's the document. Okay, so the document itself is the root node. All right, the document is the root node. Then other nodes are branches and leaves, including elements, attributes, and tests. So you know that your HTML page starts with the HTML tag, and every other thing inside of it are nodes. So the document, now your HTML page is actually a document. Your SML document, your HTML document, these are documents, okay? So your HTML is actually a document. So that particular document, the document is actually, we have a node called a document. It is the root node. It is where every other node comes from, okay? So every other node can be branches and leaves, such as including elements, attributes, and tests. So types of DOM nodes. There are 12 types defined in the DOM specification. All right. Now remember that DOM does not just only have to do with HTML, it also has to do with XML. All right. So there are 12 types of nodes defined in the DOM specification, but in practical usage, we mostly work with 5 of them. And then let's take a look at the common node types that we in practice. The first one is the element node. This element node represents an element, an HTML element, the div, the span, the H1, H2, any element at all. Okay, and there's a property there's a property called node type. So we are actually going to take this element node, these different types of nodes. We're actually going to have separate sessions for them so that we can have enough time to explain them. But for now, understand that the element node it represents HTML tags, the div, the span, the URL, anything that's an HTML element represents the element node. And there's a property called the node type. If you want to, when you're writing it when you're using JavaScript, if you want to get to know the node, the type of node you're working with, there's a property each and every one of them has we call the node type. So the node type for an element is 1. All right. So let's do some practical things here. All right. So see this HTML that we are working with. So I'm going to run it. Okay. I'm going to run it. Now we are here. All right. So let me try to get a document. So let me try to get a node. All right. Let me say constant H1 is equal to document dot get I can use get element by tag name, get elements by name. Okay, I can use query selector. Don't worry, we'll talk about all this, how to query, how to get this. So I can say query selector. We'll talk about this later on. And what I want to get H1. Okay, and when I get it, all right, I have it in H1. So if I say H1, all right, dot node type. All right, you can see there's a property called node type. If I say .node type, you see it gives me 1. If I hit enter, it gives me 1. So because this H1 is an element, so the node type of this element is 1. So every element has a node type of 1. All right. Every element has a node type of 1. Div, H1, span, as long as it's an element, it has a node type of 1. So you can actually create a new element. Don't worry, we'll talk about how to work around with these things, creating elements. We have them in separate sessions so that we can have enough time to explain them. So now, you can console log the node type, and the node type for all the element node is 1. All right. So we also have the test node. Don't worry, we are going to discuss these things in later sessions and explain them in details. We have another node type called the test node. Now, this test node, the node type is 3, and this thing represents any actual text inside an element. All right. Any text that you have written inside an element is called a test node. All right. So the text that you have inside elements, they are called test node, and the node type is equal to 3. So now we can create a test node. All right, don't worry, we are going to do this later on as you see how to create nodes, create elements, stuff like that, okay? And then the node type is 3. So if I go if I go to, I want to do something here. Okay. If I say, um, okay, so if I say, look at it, if I say h1 dot test content, okay, let me save it somewhere. If I say const and I just call it test is equal to this, okay, and I hit enter. So if I say test, okay, dot, okay, so there's something I'm trying to actually do here, but it's okay. But look at what you can do. You can actually create a test node. All right, you can create, yeah, you can actually create a test node. What I was doing here was just to get a test of it, but this is not a test node. So you can actually create a test node. All right. So when we start taking a look at how to query the document, okay, we can actually do more of this. So you can actually create a test node. All right. And if you create a test node, you can append it to a child or something. So when we take a look at that, we'll talk about that in detail. So we have element node, we have test node. The node type of an element node is 1, the node type of a test node is 3. And you can actually create a test node, but we'll talk about that later on. So comment, we also have comment node because in your HTML page, you also write comment. So the node type for comments node is 8. All right. For element, the node type is 3. For test, for element, the node type is 1. For test, the node type is 3. For comment, the node type is 8. So you can actually still create comment using JavaScript, but we'll talk about how to create all these things. And later on, we are going to talk about each of these node type in details in their own sessions. So we also have the document node. Now the document node is like the parent node, and the node type is 9. We have element node, we have comment node, we have test node, and we have document node. Document node, the node type is 9. So it is the root of the DOM tree. That is where everything begins from. It is the root of the DOM tree, and it is typically accessed via the document. You see, it is actually accessed via the document. So if you want to access the root node, you can do something like this. You can say, you just type in the document, okay? You can see, as I get it highlighted, every other thing here, you see, if I take my mouse here, every other thing here gets highlighted because that is the root node. So if I do this dot node type, okay, you see, it gives us 9. So the node type of the document node is 9. The node type for element node is 1. Node type for test node is 3. Node type for comments node is 8. And node type for the document is 9. So we also have document fragment node, all right? This is you use the document fragment node to temporarily manipulate the DOM. It is a temporary something, all right? So it is used as a lightweight container to manipulate DOM elements off screen. We'll talk about this in details. In each separate session, we discuss about it in details. That when you start learning React, there's something we also call fragment in React. And then when you understand this, you're going to understand that too. So the node type of this document fragment node is 11. So you can create a document fragment node using the create document fragment method. But don't worry, we'll talk about all these things later on. And the node type of this one is 11. Okay, so now we always have this confusion, a node and an element. All right, the thing is this, a node is everything. An element is a node, but a node might not be an element. Okay, look at it. Node is a generic term. It can be an element, test node, comment node. It can be document node. Do you understand? Okay, but an element is a specific type of node. An element is a node. A node can be an attribute node. It can be a comment node. It can be a test node. All right. It can also be an element node. So an element is a node. Why a node can be any other thing apart from element, aside element too. So it can be text node, it can be comment node, but an element is a specific type of node, and it is what you usually work with when manipulating HTML. So element is what we work with, the H1, the H2, the UL tag, the span tags, all the HTML tags. They are elements. We call them elements, okay? So an element can be a node, but a node can never be, a node can also be an element, or it can be a text node, it can be a comment node, okay? So look at this, look at this, look at this, okay, let me copy this. Let me copy this, okay, all right. Let me just borrow this code. Oops. Okay. So now I want to borrow this code. Let me put it here so that we can use it as an example. Okay, so here you see here we have a container, we have a test, we have a span, and we have a comment here. So we have different kinds of nodes here. So let's get back to our slide. Okay, so this results in the following nodes. Okay, look at it. We see this node, this example we have here, this div container, all right, we have some element node. Now, the first element node that we encounter here is the div container, is the div, all right? That's the first node that we encounter, okay? Then the second node that we encounter will be this hello. This hello will be a test node, all right? We'll have another element node because this span is also an element. So the span element is another element node. And after that, we get a comment node. But we also have the document node that encloses all of them, remember. All right. We also have the document node that encloses all of them. But in this small code snippet, okay, we have an element node, the div, first div, we have a test hello, we have another node span, we have comment, and that is it. Okay. So now these are the nodes. We also have a test. We have div node, element node. We have another test node, hello. We have another element node, span. And we also have a test node. Remember, this span has some test. So this test is also a node. And finally, we now have a comment node. Okay. So let's take a look at the commonly used properties of the node. These properties are available on all node types, all right? They are not just elements, they are available on, remember, node types can be more than element node, okay? So now they are available on element node, they are available on document node, they are available on comment node, test node, okay? But how they behave depends on the type of node. All the properties we are going to be discussing now, all right, they are found in all the node types, but the way they behave depends on the node. So the first one is the node type, which you have seen. This, when you call this node type property, it returns the type of node as a number. Element is equal, 1 is equal to element, 3 is equal to test, etc. So the first one you have is the node type. You have seen me do it already. Okay, so if I go back to code, and here you can say document.node type, it gives you 9. All right, it gives you 9. So this is a property on a node. I can also say, now we have our, this thing have changed. So I can say, I want to look for, I want to get, I can say div is equal to document, oops, document dot, I can still use the query selector, and then I'll give it div. Now, of course, we only have one div in there, so it returns this div, and I'll say div dot node type. The node type here is 1 because this is an element. So the node type of this div is an element, is 1. All right. So we can also take a look at another type. All right. We can take another type is the node name. The node name will give you, because now remember every element I would actually have the node type as 1, but their name would vary because the node name for the node type for span, div, anchor tag, they are all 1. That's the node type. But the node name can be used to differentiate them. Okay, so it returns the tag name, uppercase for elements. It can also return text. It returns hash test, hash comment for test and for comments respectively. So if I go now and say, if I go back to the browser and I say div.node name, all right, it will return a div. It will return div. But if I, let me clear, if I try to, if I try to say const, I want to get the span. You know, we have a span there. You can say document.query. Don't worry, we're going to talk about the accessing element later on. If I say document.span, get me the span. All right, we get the span. And if I say span dot node name, all right, you can see it gave me span, but this div and this span, they are all elements. So if I say, if I go for their node type, both of them will give me one. But if I go for their node name, it will give me it will give me something different. Okay, so if I clear again, let me look for tests. If I say const um now, if you try to do node type for, okay, let me do something. Um, oops. I'm trying to. If I try to do the node name for test, okay, okay. Let me just create constant. I will say, let me just call it test, and I will say is equal to document. Let me just create test node. All right, and this test node, I will call it hello. All right. Now I have created a test node. So if I go on and say test dot node name, you see, it will give us, look at what it will give us. It will go, when you, the node name for test nodes will give you hashtag test. It will give you hashtag test. The node name for comment will give you hashtag comments. Okay, you can also create a comment and try it. Okay, so node name for elements will give you the tag name. All right, node name for test will give you hashtag test. All right. We also have the node value. The node value, it is only for test and for no comment nodes. The test value for the elements will return null. So when you try to do node value on elements, it will give you null. All right. But if you try to do test dot node value, all right, it will give you the value that node, that test node contains, which is hello. But if I try to say div, all right, dot node value, it will give me null because it will give me null. Look at it, it gave me null. Remember, this div is the one that we have been using before. So when you try to do the node value on an element, it will give you null. But when you try to do the node value on a comment or a test node, it will give you the value that they contain. That's the test that they contain. All right. So child nodes. The child node will return all the children node of of an element. It return a node list of all child nodes, element test of a particular node. So if we go on and say now we have this div. Remember, we still have this div, and this div is the container that we have there. If I say dot child node, it will return an array of node lists. If I hit enter, it will give us, it gave us, yes, look at it, it gave us, it's telling us that it gave us all the children node, all right? It gave us all the node that are inside of this div. So we have the test, we have the span, we have the test, we have the comment, we have the test, remember, all right? Remember, so we have test, we have span, we have comment, and so all these things are nodes. Okay, so if you want to target the comment, I can go for the index is 3. So I can actually say, you can say the index, go for the index 3, and it will give me the comment. And if I say dot node value, it will give me the value. You can see it's giving me the value. It's showing me, if I do this, You see, it gave me the value of that comment. And if I try to say what is the node name, it will give me comment, a hashtag comment. Do you understand? So this is how you go around to work about it, okay? So when you try to do child node, it will give you all the children of an element that are nodes. All right, it will return all the node types under that particular node. This div is a node that we got. Remember how we got it? We did document or query selector and we gave it string div, so that it gave us that div, this div container, and that's what we are working with here. So the child nodes will return a list of nodes, all the nodes that are contained in that. So the children, when you say, instead of child node, if you say children, the children would only return child elements. Remember, child nodes will return all the nodes that are children of that element. But when you say children, it will return all the elements that are children of that node. Remember, there is a difference between node and element. So when we go on and say div.children, it will not include the text and the comment. Okay, it will not include them. It wouldn't include them. If I say children, you can see it only gave us, the only thing we have there is span, because span is the only element child. All right. So the other children are nodes. They are not elements. So the children will return all the elements children, while the child nodes will return all the element nodes. Okay. So if you expand this, you get the span. All right, as an element child there. Okay, sorry. So you can also do the first child, the last child. Okay, the first child will return what, an element can be a parent. Remember this div container that we are working with now. Okay, look at this div container. All right, this div container, all right, is the parent of every other thing inside of it. This span container is the parent of this word. Okay, this body is the parent of every other thing inside of it. The HTML tag is the parent of the HTML tag is parent of the head and the body, while the head is the parent of every other thing in here. So now you can say, give me the first child. It is not hard. I'm going to leave it to I'm going to leave that to you. If I say div dot first child, all right, the first child, when you say first child, it is returning all the nodes. First child will refer to the first node child, not just the element. It will return the first node child. So if I go ahead and say, give me the first child, you see it returned a test node. All right, look at it. It returned a test node and the value is hello. But if I say div dot first element child, that's the difference. The first element child is going to return only the element, the first element child. Remember, the first child will return the first element, the first node child, while the first element child will return the first element, that is the child, the first child of the element that is an element. Okay, so the same thing with child nodes and children. First child will refer to the first node child, while first element child will refer to the first element child. So play around with these things. Okay. You also have last child. Okay, the last child will return the last child, the last node child. All right. So the first element child, the last element child will return the first or the last element child. There is a difference between node and element. Okay, don't get it confused. And if you get it confused, please reach out to me so that I can explain more. All right. So you can actually get the first element child. You can actually get the last element child. So if you want to get a parent node, all right, you can say div.parent node, all right, and it will give you whoever is the parent. All right. If I say div.parent node, parent node, not parent element. Parent node will give us any node at all. All right. If I say this, it gives us body. Remember, this our div is inside the body. But if I try div dot parent element, all right, it will still give us body because the body is also a node. All right. So that is the difference. So parent element will return the parent element node, while the parent node will return the parent node. All right. So play around with these things to understand the differences. Yeah, we have the parent element, which I just explained now. It returns the parent if it is an element, otherwise it will return null. All right, but this our div, the parent is the body, so that's why it didn't return null. But if the parent is not an element, it will return null. All right, so we also have next sibling, previous sibling. Now, this thing has to do with um, sibling means, now look at it, the div have some children. So all the children of that div, they are siblings to each other. So the next sibling, that means the next one following that particular element, the previous one is the one before. So I'm going to leave you to do some thinking here. All right, experiment with these things. This one will return, this next sibling, previous sibling will be returning node, any type of node. It can be a comment, it can be a text, it can be an element. So when you say node.next sibling, it will return the next, you know what a sibling is, and we have told you that we have parent node, we have children node, we have child node, and the siblings are now the children of a particular node. So I want you to do some thinking here. So when you say node.next sibling, to give you the next sibling node, all right, or the previous sibling node. When you say next element sibling, to give you the next sibling that is an element. If the next sibling is not an element, it will return null. All right. So we also have the test content. The test content will return. This one has to do with test node. All right. You can use it to set or get the test inside of a node. Okay. So it has to do with comments or test node. So now we also have the inner HTML. The inner HTML will return, and now look at it. If we go ahead and say, if I say div.test content, all right, this is the content of the test content. It will return all the tests, all right, of this, all the test content of that div. If I try to say div.inner HTML, it will return, all right, it will return all the HTML, not just the text. It will return everything, all the elements. Look at it. This one is return all the elements, both text, comments, and elements, the inner HTML. So the text content will return just the text, all the text. All right. While the inner HTML will return all the HTML. So you can also change everything. You can also change the inner HTML here. So you can use this inner HTML to set or get the content of an element. All right. So outer HTML says, or it gets or sets the element including itself. So when you say, look at it, when you say inner HTML, it is only returning the content of this HTML. But if I say outer HTML, it would also return itself. It will return, you can see now the div is included. You can see now the div is included. But when we did inner HTML, the div wasn't included. Look at the one on top. All right. The inner HTML didn't include the div, but the outer HTML also included the div and its content. So these are the things you can play around, and they are very, very useful when you start working with the DOM. Okay. So we also have owner document. It returns the top level document that owns this node. All right. So when you say the owner document, it might be giving you. So let's try and see what the div owner document will give us. It gives us the owner. So if I say div.owner document, now you can see the owner document here is the document object. Basically, most of the times it will be the document object. Okay. So thank you very much for taking this class. Make sure you do your assignment, make sure you do your test, and I will see you in the next session.